Hey everybody, welcome to WP Roundtable episode 179. Today I'm joined by Jason Cohen. Thanks for hopping on the show with me today, Jason.
I'm glad to be on the show that's almost a straight line angle. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about our conversation. You've been on my short list for quite a long time, and at this point, when I've been doing this show for as long as I have, that short list it actually is pretty short by now. So we've got a lot to talk about. I'm so interested in everything that you guys are doing and learn a little bit more about your background as well. Filling in some of the gaps, the pieces that I don't know already. But for anybody tuning in who's not familiar, Jason is the founder of a little company, small startup you've probably never heard of, called WP Engine, doing awesome things in the WordPress space. And this is going to be a fun chat. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
We bumped into each other in person a couple times along the way. I think the first time I had a conversation with you in real life was in Minneapolis at Prestige Conf.
Oh, yeah.
And we found ourselves idly chatting in the hallway about, I don't know, higher ed and WordPress and stuff. I think I was building some websites for colleges at the time in my agency days.
Yeah, that was fun. I was doing an A/B testing talk, which is actually one of my favorite ones because everybody does A/B testing or computes it wrong. The software computes it wrong. And I, of course, in that presentation show exactly why that happens and how to do it right and those other fallacies. And it's no matter how many times I say that, people usually still do it wrong. So I love talking about that.
Yeah, that was a great talk and a really interesting topic, which, yeah, you're right. Nobody but yourself in my experiences like that have I come across talking about it in that way.
I like to scout about numbers, so it works for me.
That's a pretty valuable quality for someone in your position. Running tech companies, numbers, they kind of help. Anyway, let's jump into our quick picks of the week real fast. Just share something worthy of sharing. It's something we've done every episode since we started this thing way back in the day. My quick pick this week is an article on the LearnDash blog. I'm real close friends with the folks at LearnDash. They're buddies of mine, and they live in just the next county over. And Justin, the founder of the company, wrote about the LearnDash software and WordPress being featured in the G2 crowd high performer list for the second year in a row, which is like some sort of prestigious, like, I don't know, software awards list of some kind. I haven't come across it much besides this, but LearnDash is really kind of doing some cool stuff, and I'm always excited to put a spotlight on my pals, and proud of like what they're accomplishing, and excited about their upcoming 3.0 release, which all I can say is it looks pretty darn sweet. So go over to the LearnDash blog and check out this article and read about how WordPress and LearnDash are being kind of acknowledged by people outside of the WordPress space for what they're doing. Jason, do you have anything cool to share these days?
Well, the thing everyone wants to talk about is Gutenberg. In fact, we're probably Gutenberged out. But
at this point,
yeah, but Automatic has a plugin that they're using with VIP called Ramp that helps people ease into Gutenberg, and I think it's a really big deal because it does no good to say, "Oh, I don't want to use that," because of course it's happening. On the other hand, of course, you may not want to change everything or change the way you work all in one shot either. So the ability which that plugin gives you to turn Gutenberg on and off for certain posts or post types or etc., in other words, piecemeal it, allows you to say, okay, I'm going to start using it in certain ways or certain people, certain etc., and ease into it. And I think that is a good thing for a big change. So a lot of people still don't know about it or use it. So I think it's a pretty nice plugin.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like a valuable resource. I'm gonna have to share that with people at my meetup and so on. I feel like there used to be a plugin called Ramp. It was maybe Crowd Favorite had a plugin called something like that.
Not sure.
Yeah, years ago. Anyway, sounds cool. Thanks for sharing, Jason. Let's talk about your background for a little while, and we can cover this as quickly or in as great detail as you like. Maybe I'll have a couple questions along the way. I like to start at the point when you were younger, before your career had been established, when all you had was not experience, not a degree, but a plan, a vision, even if it was just a vague idea of the direction that you wanted to go. Tell us about like that time when you started to feel like, I need to make a plan. I think I know what my plan is. What was it, and how did you get started?
I have not really ever had a plan. The reason I'm laughing is I really feel like everything has been being out there and doing things, and then every once in a while there's some opportunity that being out there created, and then I followed that thing. So it was writing code and making a library in high school. Then that was seen by um, and our high school was, this is in the 90s. We were the first high school in the nation to get the internet. So I was on this sort of founding group in high school to wire up the school because they let the students do it, but we had to organize and do whatever. We
Wow.
did. And so then like some code that I was working on, I put it on quote unquote the internet, which again, you have to imagine how small this is when like nobody has it. Even just dial up on AOL is like, a big deal. You're still getting CDs in the mail kind of stuff. And so then at another academic area, Tracor Aerospace, which had an R&D department in Austin where I grew up, they saw it and they said, that's interesting. And so I got a job as an intern writing C code for controllers. It's a long story, with Tracor in high school. Again, like that wasn't a plan, but I was doing something interesting, and in doing something interesting, an opportunity then appeared, and also I said yes. Right. And I can just keep going. I don't want, it's maybe boring to keep going, but like each thing I can point out like, well, I did this and I made it available, or I put it on the web or whatever, or I didn't. I was just intensely interested in it. And so I got some kind of, if not expertise, then an intensity in it. And so then when the opportunity presented itself, there I was ready. I think that's the path. And so, this WP Engine is my fourth startup. Obviously, it's very successful. The other startups were of different levels of success, but all but the first one, I think, was, anyone would say, successful. All of them got to a run rate of more than $1 million a year in revenue. The previous two were sold. WP Engine obviously is way, way bigger, et cetera. But nevertheless, all of them by any measure were successful, but none of them that I start with a plan. In fact, just the fact that I've been sort of fallen into startup land instead of having real jobs also is an indication of not having a plan. I think a
So
lot of
funny.
founders had that story. It's all nice to say, oh, it's changing the world and doing all these things. But I think usually it's like I was futzing around and something actually seemed to work, and
Yeah.
off I went. And it's not so planful. Even things like WhatsApp and Instagram, and a lot of companies like Slack, certainly when you read the histories, founders weren't doing anything like what they ended up doing that was successful. They were messing around, like the same thing. It's not very directed. So I don't think that's always the case. PayPal was very directed, for example. They knew they wanted to create a currency and had to build all the pieces to do that, which is a change of the world sort of thing.
Mhm.
But you can have a plan, of course, but a lot of things don't. I don't think you have to. Following your nose can work.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm interested in that a little bit, or like having you reflect on that. If you look back on the winding path that you've taken to get where you are, you consider yourself one who was more reactive and opportunistic, just as an opportunity came your way, taking full advantage of it and being fortunate enough to make good decisions in the moment, or a little bit balanced with someone like seeing an objective. Maybe it's not something so specific and career oriented, but like a goal, a vision in your mind, and chasing it regardless of the obstacles that are in your way. Like, where do you consider that balance being found when you look back at the path you've taken?
Well, again, I don't really have. I mean, now at WP Engine, we have to have goals. You have to. This is too many things to just sort of follow your nose. There's too many things going on. You can't do that. I can be specific about why if you want, but but maniacal about doing it, or about doing a good job, or something that people would pay for, which means a lot of things, or winning in the competitive market. Being intense about all those things, yes. But because there's a particular end state that I want, no. I mean, even doing Smart Bear for 10 years, or sorry, 7 years, my previous company, it was bootstrapped. Actually, all the companies were bootstrapped. Even WP Engine was bootstrapped for the first 2 years. But it was bootstrapped. It was very profitable. It was 7 years. It was a decently long journey. And at no point was there a particular end game. The point wasn't to sell it. The point wasn't to not sell it. The point wasn't to raise money, which we didn't. But also, there was no like mandate that we not. Like it was just we're following what we think customers want, what we think is good in that particular market, what we think is a good product. So the intensity of all those things that you listed, yes, but because there's this end goal in mind, we will have 20 people, or we will have this much money, or we will sell the business or something. No. And I think actually, I mean, of course it's good to have goals. And it's also good to know what you like or what you want, because then you can design things around some goal. And so that's a useful thing. At the same time, it can be dangerous to say the outcome we want is X. And so we will optimize everything we do for X, because then when X doesn't work out, is the company or the organization or your life in a state that's okay still? So for example, I don't like it when people build a company to sell. Usually you kind of get to a point where, well, now's the time to sell for various reasons, size, growth, market, economy. There's various reasons why now's the time, quote unquote. Of course, it's very hard to just then go decide to sell it. You usually don't get a very good price when you do so, if you get one at all. Usual cases, none at all. And that's a terrible outcome. And then if that happens, either you have a bad outcome, or if you decide not to, now what? Because the whole thing was built not for sustainability, but to flip. So now it's not designed now to continue, and yet continue is probably what it needs to do. So that's just an example, setting up a goal like I will sell the company in 2 years, where it's okay to say things like I want to maximize that chance, but I think it can be bad to sub-optimize on a particular goal. It can be bad for the overall health of the organization.
Right. So again, kind of looking back, I want to ask about like two specific instances. One, can you think of the moment where an opportunity came your way, a surprising chance opportunity that was the most significant, and without that opportunity having come your way, your path would have been very different. And additionally, the moment where you feel like you made the best decision that like absolutely put you on the right path and led to the best direction you could have possibly taken, whether you knew it or not at the time. A decision that was highly impactful, an opportunity and a decision.
Great. So an opportunity is after let me think. After my first company, which was a consulting company, it crested. Again, it was a couple million a year in revenue, but then the bubble burst. Or not the bubble, but it was 9/11, and after that, it was hard to get work. We had this one last contract, so we had a couple of people left, and everyone else had to go. Fortunately, we found jobs for them because they were all smart, so it was okay. But eventually that wound down too, and so I was going to need to do the next thing, and I was thinking about maybe hooking up with the company that we were doing work for, but as an employee or something else. And the person who ended up being my co-founder at IT Watchdog's second company convinced me to go do that company instead of getting a job. And his name is Jerry Cohen. His main argument was, you can always go get a job, because if you're sufficiently good, you can always go get a job. And so don't use the fact that you're young and you can do different things because there's not too much responsibility and so on, and your cost basis is low personally. Like, use the fact that you're young and have energy and can go get another job and don't need to pay for big life equipment, as you might say. Use that to go do this company with me. And so had he not convinced me, I probably wouldn't have gone and taken that leap to another startup. I know I would take another. I would have had a regular job. What I've then eventually peeled off, I don't know. Who can say? But I definitely wouldn't have done that. And had I done that, I wouldn't have started the next company. And had I not done that and sold it, we sold IT Watchdogs 2 for an okay amount. Smart Bear was better. And that really set up really everything, including WP Engine after that. And so it all kind of comes back down to Jerry convincing me over a course of maybe 3 weeks to take a much bigger risk than I was going to. And in a recession, don't forget. So it's a kind of a scary time. Like, maybe I should just have a job for a while. Put this stuff back in the savings. It's that kind of a time, right? 2002 and we're the end of 2001 was not a good time for anybody, except short sellers, I guess. So that was probably a pivotal moment in the career trajectory. Listening to someone saying, take a risk. Risk may not turn out, obviously. It doesn't always work out. That's obvious. In fact, IT Watchdogs itself, if you look at the entire company and ask, like, oh, did you make millions of dollars? No. But in terms of the life experience, what I learned there, both how fun it was and also how difficult, but also what I learned about marketing and sales in particular, because I'm an engineer, it might be obvious, but I learned so much from my co-founder about marketing and sales and other business things, even crap like real estate and commercial real estate, office space and insurance and stuff like that, just things that are necessary to run. That was actually incredibly useful, it turns out. So again, like, it's not about how much money do we make this year or what did we make when we sold. It's not even really about that. It's really about the journey of doing all of that and how did you use that going forward, or just enjoy it for that matter. Enjoy the journey, which Sure. I think people forget to do, even though that's life. That is your life. So that is the most important thing. Not the goal. The part where you like what you do every day is really important and hard to build. Actually, it's hard to build just that. Anyway, so that I would put as the pivotal moment. And then the best decision, that's easy. So I started WP Engine in 2010, and I ran it as the CEO till about 60 or 80 people or so. And at that point, before that point we were talking, but kind of officially at that point, Heather Bruner, who had first joined as a board member in an independent seat, and then later a few months later joined the company, became CEO. Now, obviously, there's a bigger process or time frame there, but that was the transition point. And that was the best decision that I've ever made, is to not be the CEO and instead hand that to someone who is a great CEO of a company that is who we were then and who we are now. In other words, when the company's very small, I'm good. Like to start things or have a small team, 10, 20 people, maybe 30. I am a good CEO, but I am not when it starts to get into that, what you might call the very early stages of scale, like 40, 50 people. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm the wrong person. Not only skill set, not only experience, although now, of course, I've seen stuff, but nevertheless, but also what I like and what I'm naturally good at. Those do not play to my strengths, and I don't enjoy it anyway. Even when I'm forced myself to be good at it, because the theory of doing that is very interesting, but I don't enjoy it. And when you do things you don't enjoy, that means you resent coming to work. And it's pretty crazy to to take all the risk and build an organization that you resent being at. That's very common, by the way, with founders, extremely common. There's even some data on that show it's possibly the majority case, similar to depression in founders is possibly the majority case as well. Anyway, it's very common to build an organization you don't want to be at, as odd as that is. And so definitely the best decision ever is to bring in someone who is, in fact, an unbelievably amazing CEO in many ways, personally, the organization, leadership, culture, in many directions, amazing. And there is no doubt at all that the reason we are in the position we are now is due to Heather's leadership. And so, sure, I get to take credit for the first 4 years, getting the rocket off the pad. And certainly this was an incredible company with a great culture, in a good market, with a product people liked, and so forth and so on. But there's no way we would be anywhere close to where we are today, 5 years after that moment, if it's not for Heather. So certainly the best decision I've made.
Wow. Yeah, that's remarkable. And I love expressing the difficulty of the founders and illustrating with that decision that you made. And I know that I'm fully capable of going into the kitchen and making a meal that I don't like to eat, just so a company founder is fully capable of creating a company that they don't want to work at in the end when it gets there. So have there been, and that could be the time, but have there been times in this career that you've had where You mentioned happiness and satisfaction and fulfillment, like where that was very difficult,
Oh
or
yeah.
maybe a low point, and I want to know, like, what did you do to kind of break through that, and like the lowest, most difficult times in that journey.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely low times at SmartBear. So one of the things about SmartBear is it was not recurring revenue. So every month was like starting at zero. Got to get those orders. Plus,
Ugh.
we mostly had bigger companies. On the one hand, it was really cool because our customers were people like Microsoft, Adobe, Qualcomm, EA Sports. It was like really cool brands and doing really interesting things and giving us lots of money per customer. So that was neat on the one hand. On the other hand, if you're only going to make 16 sales with an initial transaction size of 20 to 80 grand, hoping that occasionally it's in the six figures or low seven figures now and then, every month is kind of a nail biter. You're like, oh, I hope we make enough money this month, right? Because we're starting over. There's no like recurring thing. So that was nerve wracking. Eventually, when I sold SmartBear, I wasn't actively selling it. It was an inbound request, but I jumped at it and I was very unhappy and I didn't even realize it. I think, you get in this mode where you're like, well, of course I'm stressed out all the time. I'm running a small bootstrap business where every month the revenue resets. You'd be stressed out too. This is just what it is. And that is true. It is what it is. But it shouldn't be like that for 7 years or something's wrong. Like there are times or moments or early times and so on where that's what it is. But like ultimately it's an unhealthy organization if that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
So for example, I could have hired different people or other people to take over things that I didn't want to do or couldn't do or was stressed out about doing or et cetera. As just one example, there's many examples of things to do. We could have chosen not to do certain products. I could have chosen. I mean, there's so many different choices you can make. I mean, if you're the founder or CEO, that's kind of the point, is you can make choices, which is also why it's all your fault, whatever's happening, because you have the ability to make different choices. So there's kind of this I had for sure, and I think other people often have this not defeatist but attitude, but this attitude that things are inevitable. This is just what it's like. And to me, that's usually a combination of not knowing what options are. Like often you don't see that there's four things you could do. You just see like there's only one thing, and that's to proceed. Or there's only two things, and I don't like option B. As opposed to realizing that typically there's 5 or 10 major options you can do about any big strategic thing, like what to do with the company. Having seen a lot of those things now, because I've invested in some companies and seen different paths there, and I don't know, just because also it's been over 10 years, and so just life experience, you start seeing like, oh, there's actually lots of options. That doesn't mean they're all good, but it's very different than just saying I have to continue on this path. There also could be some kind of heroism kind of thing, like I should work the hardest because reasons, where I need to show everyone else that I work harder than them or something like that. Whereas usually the rest of the people in the company are like, I'm really worried about that person. She should take a break. She should go on vacation. We got it. What, does she not trust us to get it? Like she needs it. And actually it can make people feel uncomfortable that you're like that when you think you're being a hero by doing things for them. We have these stupid phrases like the job of a manager is to do all the shit work so that the other people can actually do work. That just means being a manager is shitty. That doesn't make sense. So again, that's a way, if you take that to the extreme, then the founder or CEO should do all the worst things, and that is often what happens. Actually, again, that's not. You shouldn't be so aloof that you can't be bothered to take out the trash ever. That's just not being a person, right? On the other hand, if no one ever takes out the trash but you 7 years in, that's not really necessary, and that's not necessarily what the other people at the company want the founder to be doing or the CEO to be doing. So humility and an aspect of that is important, but it can be, we have these weird phrases that sometimes we take it to such an extreme that it doesn't make sense, or it's harmful. I think. Sometimes people are stingy with things like stock or control, and if you're going to be stingy with that, then you're going to get then you're not going to have help. In other words, what Well, I've never given stock to anyone because I'm the founder, and that's the deal. Okay, well then you're only going to get a certain caliber of person for certain kinds of leadership roles, because those leaders can get that, and that means you won't have that kind of help, and you don't even know what you're missing.
Right.
And that's just being stingy with the value. And some of that is maybe in the worst case, I guess that's selfish. But I think in the more common case, there's this notion of like, no one could be more impactful than me. Who could be more impactful in the company than I? And therefore, it's not, why would I do that? Or what if they're not as impactful as they want and I still gave them stock? Or what if that, and all this kind of stuff. This notion that it should be earned, but also that it's not really possible to earn anyway. And I'm a great example of, look, I'm very good at many things and I'm smart and all these things. It's easy to, I can say that, it's fine. And I'm surrounded by people who are much better than me at all kinds of functions and disciplines, skill sets, and so forth that are all very important at WP Engine. And some of that is on the executive team, and some of that is people that have nobody reporting to them, right? It's all over. Of course, because that's what a great organization would look like. That each person who's there in that job is the best person that could be there, which by definition means they had better be better than the person they're left at that job. Otherwise, they wouldn't be the best person, would they? That's what it looks like when it's good. But a lot of times founders do just the opposite. They don't hire people that are better than them at things, or they don't think someone can be. But then you're right. If you think no one will ever be better than you at marketing or selling your product or building your product or knowing what the customer wants, if you think no one can, you're absolutely right, because you'll never hire someone who in fact can. As opposed to having the opposite view, which is everything that happens here could be done 10 times better if we had the right person. We can't afford all those people, and maybe we can't even find half those people, but your job as a leader, especially the CEO, but any leader, is to go find those people as much as you can and stick them in there. That's what's going to optimize your organization. And by the way, be a bunch of fun to work with people who are so amazing at their work. And then you can leave for the week because they're better at it than you anyway, at doing all the things they're doing. And also the organization's the best. Like, that's the right attitude, but it's exactly the opposite attitude that a lot of founders, especially bootstrap founders, who don't have anyone telling them what to do at all, that's what they think. And that's how I was at Smart Bear. So I'm not trying to exclude myself from that characterization. That's me. Hi, that's me. It's just I learned more over the last 10 years. And this is some of what I learned. Again, part of the wisdom of bringing on Heather is that was the first moment where the dam could really break at WP Engine in terms of this particular idea. And it's not only is it of course successful in practice, it's also a bunch of fun. It's fun working with people in marketing who are amazing. We can do all sorts of cool stuff. It's so cool. We can put on events that are like really pro. We can do all kinds of strange campaigns, and we can put out content, and we can work with other groups because we have partnerships, because we have a partner team. And so we can launch things in ways that I couldn't imagine before. And that's just in marketing, and you could cross apply that to anything. So yeah, that was really important. I know we're tying this back to decisions or times were bad. I know that was the original question, but I think this is all very useful as well as important, and it does tie to all that in the sense that I did get into that place at Smart Bear because I didn't do these things, and all these things I've listed are the antidote to the thing that I myself did and how I got to that place. And there's proof that it's the antidote. Here at WP Engine, I'm not feeling that way, and I believe the things I just said are in the major why.
Wow. Yeah. Well, comfort yourself. This show is very pro tangent. Getting a little echo, but my other question was, I saw something that you published the other day, and the thought crossed my mind. This is like a product or news announcement or something along those lines, and I couldn't help myself from thinking, what does Jason do at WPN? Because this didn't strike me as the kind of post that traditionally a founder or someone running operations at an organization like this would be authoring and publishing. So shed some light on what your responsibilities are and where authoring these kinds of announcement blog posts falls into that.
What was the post? Just so I know what we're talking about.
It had to do with Genesis and
Gutenberg and all that.
Yep, that was the one.
So right now I have 0 people reporting to me.
Wow.
Remember what I said about what I'm good at? The best thing to do is for everyone to be in a place of strength, like, things that they're good at. Of course, also stretching and learning, both, right? Doing something they're good at and then growing in some way that they more or less enjoy. You can't enjoy every hour of every day, but more or less enjoy, and that the company really needs. The intersection of that is how you stay happy. Well, happy is too strong. It's how you stay fulfilled and as happy maybe as you can be. That's a better place with it. And it's constructive for the company and the team and so forth. That's the place to be. So that is the driving force to ask, okay, well then what is my intersection of things that I like, things that I'm good at, things the company needs? What is that? Because everyone needs to ask that question, what is mine? And as I just said, mine's not management. So I can do that. There was so for example, last year for about a year, I ran product, for example. So I can do that. I can step into that, but that's not a good permanent role for me. There are several things I'm good at. So for example, right now we have a large data project going on inside the company, and I'm leading that because this is an area of expertise of mine. And we don't yet have a full data team internally, which we're building. So we will, and then that won't be necessary. But for now, we don't. And so this is a place where I can be helpful. So we're around 600 people now. So there had better not be any sort of job or position where I'm necessary. Like at this point, if that's true, we've not hired well enough because we're missing somebody or teams for that matter. That would be very bad if that were still the case. So if that's the case, and if I shouldn't be managing a team, then what should I do if there's someone to do everything? You have to turn around and ask, well, okay, output, like things to do, the output, we better have that. But there are some things that you can't delegate. Or there are some things where it's still true that the quote unquote founder is the right person to do that thing, and that's by definition something you cannot delegate or hire for. It's painful for me to really say founder over and over again here because I really feel strongly that using that word inside of the walls of the company in which I am right now is very bad. Imagine I'm in a meeting and blah, blah, blah. And I say, well, as the founder, I think the moment someone says that in a meeting, you should quit. Like that, it's so poisonous. It's so egotistical. Like it shuts down anything, and other people. It's just, there's so many things wrong with that scenario or things that are similar in spirit to that thing. It's actually the reverse. It's hard because I can't be in a meeting and just disagree, because it's different when the founder or the CEO disagrees in a meeting. There's weight. A lot of people, no matter what your relationship, no matter how long they've been there, are not going to be comfortable responding or arguing back, even though, of course, that's what you want. And therefore, you've shut down conversation just by having an opinion, even if you couch it in saying this is just opinion and I wonder what other people think. It doesn't matter. Half the people in the room, first of all, won't respond. And then there's other weird things that happen, like the other day, there was a meeting like this. We were discussing a decision, and a week later, it was still being discussed, and I wasn't even in this other meeting. And person A said to person B, well, Jason agrees with me. Remember last meeting? He agrees with me. So I think, and again, like, see how poisonous that is? Just the fact that I voiced an opinion somewhere, that's enough for someone to put that in their pocket and whip it out when I'm not even there to say, wait, I was just, no, like, right? I'm not even there to try to soften that. That's what I mean. That is actually a problem that it's hard to shirk. So someone who is flaunting the thing that already is a problem, that's a bad thing. So what is the thing that you can't delegate and so forth? So one of them is external things. Like you want to talk to me, and you did not ask to talk to our SVP of R&D. He's the one that leads 130 people in our engineering department, but you didn't ask to talk to him because founder has a very special role outside the walls of the company, and that's where it's appropriate. Because that's why I get on stage at SaaStr, and that's why we're talking right now, and that's why I keynote Business of Software, and that's why anybody reads my blog, right? And that's why, right? And that's why any editor anywhere either wants to talk to the CEO or the founder because, that's what you want to talk to. So, and again, I'm not trying to say that through ego. It's just true. Like it's just the case. And that you can't delegate that to your VP of public relations, which we have, but nobody wants that person to be on the stage, and no one wants to talk, no one wants to get a quote from the VP of public relations, right? So externally, it's very valuable. Media, analysts, events, and so forth. All of these are good ways. Another example of external stuff is hiring and talent. It's never not important to hire great talent. There's never comes a day where that's not critical. Like top 3 things any business has to do at any given time is make sure you have the best talent. Period, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're 2 people and you have a couple of consultants sometimes to do this or that, okay, but they need to be the best, right? So it's always important. So I spend a lot of time interviewing candidates or going to the coffee or trying to pull someone out of another job. I know you're happy, but let me get you excited about WP Engine. That's something that it's not that I can uniquely pull someone out, but I can be pretty helpful because I have that, again, that invisible magic hammer called Founder that I get to swing around. I might be able to get that coffee of someone who's at Google or someone who's at Facebook, and it's gonna be hard to pull them out, and we're not gonna pay them what they're making there. I can probably get that coffee because I can swing that hammer around, where it might be hard for our recruiting team to do it because their title says recruiter, right? And we have an internal team. We don't even outsource it. We have actually a big team of internal recruiters, but it doesn't matter because no one wants to talk to a recruiter. They want to talk to the founder, maybe, or at least maybe the SVP of R&D would work in that case, right? That's pretty good too. But okay, so talent recruiting, that's a big one. And then at any given time, there's 1 or 2 projects. So like right now, there's again this data project, and we have another product around dev tools, which we're not quite ready to announce, but there's this product that was in this sort of internal state at the moment that I've been helping with. Again, as we've ramped up a bigger team around it, I'll be able to step back more and more from that. And then another thing has been the StudioPress Genesis stuff, which that took us a few months to do at the beginning of this year. And then there's been a lot of activity around it. We've been hiring there. We've started to create a roadmap and a strategy around there. What is the strategy with that with regards to Gutenberg and blocks and how all that works, both at a high level, like what kinds of things can we do, and at a low technical level, like how might we do that? There's integrating the business, of course, the customers, that is, and like we did give all of our customers free access to Genesis themes, but that took back-end work. I mean, it's just stuff. There's just a lot of stuff around that. And again, it's because we're investing more in it, hiring, et cetera, there's more and more stuff, not less stuff in getting that together. So I've been spending a lot of time on it this year. Next year I won't, because we've also now have leaders and product managers and more engineers and all kinds of stuff, so that it won't be me needing to lean in nearly as much. But even so, now still with StudioPress and Gutenberg, and this gets back to the answer to your question of why did I write that, is this so you can see actually now exactly why, because StudioPress and Gutenberg and the strategy of in general in the WordPress space and of Gutenberg and of StudioPress, that is something that I'm leaning into right now. And also externally facing stuff is always sort of in my wheelhouse, because that's a good role for me. And thus that announcement post makes sense. And then when if someone in the press wants to talk about something, all that lines up. Oh yeah, this is our founder, and also you wrote that post that you read. Yeah, we'd be happy to talk about whatever in detail. And there you go. That's how you can see how the dots link up like that. That's not an accident.
I can see that. Yeah. Okay. And I mean, in many cases, it at a glance from an outside perspective, it looked like, huh, that's kind of funny. Jason's writing this kind of posts. I would have expected communications or a marketing team or somebody to be authoring this, but and in a lot of other companies, this is you describe a great scenario where you're writing this because things are working the way that they should be, and you're playing the appropriate role to play to your strengths. That's powerful. That's an inspiration. You said a lot of things that made me think about topics I'm interested in. One that you really did harp on a little bit, and I'm very curious to get more insight on how you have developed this, is how you can take the founder's voice or contribution and make it just that, a contribution, and not the authority, the mandate. How can you convert what you say when you say something like, well, I like the this brand of t-shirt because it feels nice, to being like, well, a vote for that brand and not the command, like this is the one that we will buy?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's of course, as usual, there's no one silver bullet. So here's a variety of answers, because it takes a variety of things, right? So one is, do you need a vote on the T-shirt?
Well, that's fair.
No,
That example, but
no.
sure.
It's a good example. It's a good example, because in a lot of places the answer is, yeah, the founder or CEO is going to have a vote on the T-shirt. And so I use that. That is a good example, because the answer is no, you probably don't. Like, why is it that you're even getting a need to vote? And the answer is because the person picking the T-shirt might pick the wrong kind. Well, who did you hire that can't pick out a T-shirt? It doesn't understand that people like T-shirts that are soft and and make sure you have for different kinds of people, and not just all for men, and blah 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 blah. Like, who did we hire to do swag that doesn't get that? So if you hire well, maybe you don't need to vote on every little thing, right?
Right.
Or maybe or maybe you do, because I mean, of course, anybody can make a mistake, or maybe someone's new, or maybe we don't have anyone that knows anything about swag. Right? Exactly. We haven't afforded that yet. So yeah, you're right. So now what? But nevertheless, does the founder need to be involved, or the CEO need to be involved in decisions, or can that be a vote with other folks? Right. So that's one thing, is maybe you don't need to say anything, and maybe you're saying too much. Just don't have an opinion. Maybe you don't need an opinion. Maybe when someone asks you your opinion about things that are actually not that important, which most things are not, maybe the answer is, I'm looking to the team or the person to make a proposal that they believe in. That's the answer. So you haven't given an opinion, but if you still want oversight, have oversight. But the idea is, team creates proposal. That way the team owns it. The team has command of that. You didn't steal the responsibility or the decision power from the team. They get to do it. That's the fun part, by the way, is inventing ideas and stuff and picking out T-shirts. That's the fun part. But like, how about don't steal that? And then you can still have the oversight and even make the decision, in the sense that the team gives you a proposal. Now, if you hate the proposal, you send it back and you tell them why and all that. But if you like it, it's good enough, you can say, terrific, and now look how you've empowered the team to do things and make decisions, even though ultimately you got to decide. It's very different than you weighing in on stuff. So that's one thing, is maybe you don't need an opinion at all. And maybe if you do, it can be in a different direction that empowers the rest of the organization instead of stealing it. So that's one thing. Another thing is, when are you having this opinion, or how are you giving this this back and forth, or this conversation? So, for example, in 360 feedback that I've received, one of the things I've learned is, when I'm one-on-one with someone, a lot of these problems that I mentioned are not problems. In other words, people do not feel like I'm telling them what to do. They do feel like they can argue against me. They feel like we're having a constructive debate, and that they don't have to be on guard or worry for whatever reason. Just maybe it's personality, who knows? But whatever reason, one-on-one, a lot of those problems are not a problem. But in a meeting with 6 people, for that same person, it's a problem. Interesting. So that means that maybe I'm in a meeting and I see whatever, and maybe there's some feedback. And look, it's not like I'll never say anything in a meeting. No, but there could be things where it's like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I've got 3 things to talk about, and after the meeting, I'll go talk to the person one-on-one and voice those to them. And if they decide to take action on it, it's them doing it, which again doesn't disempower or disintermediate them. So if it's so important, there's another way, in another context, that I can do that. Now, you have to be a little careful there, because you can get into a trap where you have to remember that a lie by omission is a lie. In other words, if we're in a meeting and everyone in the room says this is a great idea, and I think it's not, and I don't say anything, I am lying. That means I'm not trusting the team to hear the truth. It means I'm not, and so if I then go behind somebody like, well, here's what I really think, that's a very poisonous, bad form. So in general, that's actually a terrible thing to do, actually. But you have to temper that with what kind of damage might I do in this moment, in this meeting right now with these folks, what kind of damage do I do, and have to kind of make a judgment call of which way is best for the health of the team and again, the empowerment of the people in the room. So that's a bit of a judgment call, but still, these are the right things to think about. Another thing that's useful is in front of the whole company. This gets back to good again. When I address the whole company, I always get good feedback on that. Oh, it's inspiring, or it's good, or I didn't understand that. Now I understand it, whatever. So things that are in front of a lot of people where it's more one way, that's almost always constructive. So that's another way for me to participate and even have an opinion about stuff, but in a way that feels better. Another thing is the relationship that you have with people. One of the problems is that because we are hiring so much, usually in some meeting, there's someone that's been there for 3 weeks. And that person I can't have had a relationship with yet. It's just too new. Or just the number of people, like there could be someone here for 2 years, but I never really worked with them on anything, right? When that's the case and there's no relationship, it's difficult to have, most conversations are difficult. Like arguing, feedback, all that kind of stuff is very difficult when you don't know the other person because they don't know how to take it. They don't know what to do. And again, you have this hammer. So you combine all that and it's very hard. There's other people where I've worked closely with for a long time. Anywhere, any context, I can say anything to them and they'll say anything back and it's all good. And none of this is a problem whatsoever with them. In other words, having a good, real relationship with another person diffuses 100% of the problem. So having those relationships with people that you need to work with regularly is critical. So the people that directly report to you, your peers, and this is true of anybody in any company, by the way, this is not a founder thing, it's just true. Working hard to have a social relationship with those folks so that you know each other as people diffuses so many things, it's ridiculous. And a good example is, someone comes to a meeting late 3 times. What's your reaction? So the person that you don't know, they've just joined the company, whatever, you're just like, they just got here and they're standing us up. They don't respect us. What the hell's up with this person? That's the typical thought. Mm-hmm. Someone you know really well, someone who works really hard, you're like, hey, I noticed you come to the meeting late a few times. Is everything okay? Like, I know you're really, like you have this whole different attitude. Mm-hmm. Same exact behavior, except you just know somebody. Totally changes how you deal with a simple piece of adversity like that, for example, right? Never mind something much more difficult like feedback or criticism or debate, which is much harder than just like an annoyance to deal with. So in other words, if you have relationships, that diffuses it. The trouble is if you're growing or big, that might be hard. So that unfortunately that alone doesn't do it for me. It's part of the solution, but it can't be the whole solution. And a smaller company, it is the whole solution, which is great. So those are just a couple of tips. One is, do you have to have an opinion? Can you empower the team to have an opinion? And that's how you have an opinion. Do you have to say this right now in this context, or is there a different way that's more that in which it'll work better? And have actual relationships, because that diffuses it. Those are all different ways to deal with it. Bottom line is, though, it's still hard and not possible to solve completely.
That's cool. Something when you're operating in an organization of the scale of WP Engine, there are a lot of things going on. And I'm curious, like just your perspective, just sitting back and looking around, what are you most like amazed about? This could be so many things. You could look at the people that you have working at WP Engine. You could look at the office you guys are in, the customers in your portfolio, the product you have built, the function of the company, the culture that you have cultivated, so many different things, the testimonials you receive from customers, all these different things you can look around. What are some of them that just jump out to you when you look at it? You're just amazed and proud, and it's bigger and better than you really had even ever envisioned when you started.
It's easy. It's the jobs that we create. The number of people who say this is the best job they've had, the number of people where this was their first job and they left and came back and said, oh, now I know what the rest of the world is like. Never mind when I come back. But really, it's the opportunities. First of all, the fact that the door is open. Our diversity stats are extremely good. Half of our executive team are women. A third of our organization are women. More than a third of our organization does not have a college degree. And there's lots of other things, stats. But the point being, that means the door is open to come in, and also open. It continues to be open once you're here, and that's special, and that gives people opportunities. Now you still have to earn it once you're here. You can't be bad, right? But to give people just the chance and to see what folks do with that, because of course people usually take advantage. We also have, for example, a large learning and development team inside the company whose job is to teach people inside the company so they can get promotions. They teach that level 1 tech support the following skills with tests and classroom and et cetera, so they become an L2 tech and make more money. And that's a simple example. There's lots of things that they do, but to help people. Or the fact that there's a lot of lateral movement in the company. There is no department where there's not a significant number of people in there that came out of support in sales and marketing, engineering, even finance. There's folks there who started doing technical support, and for various reasons, like their own personal interests, skills, things that they decided to work on personally, like I'm going to go take a class, or I'm going to go whatever, and I'm going to get better at spreadsheets, and I'm going to join the analyst team over here in finance. And then the fact that the company is so ready and excited to help that person take that career path. A lot of people have careers that they never thought they could have, and also had the door was open in the first place in a way that it often isn't. Those kinds of things, forget about Silicon Valley changing the world in the sense that, so many people stick their nose in my app every day. That is one way, I suppose. But one by one, a person who was given a chance and took it, and they worked hard, right? They earned it, but that they were able. But a lot of people will work very hard and never have the initial chance, or can't after they join a company. So the fact that can happen, and it does, just one by one, what that does to people, that is amazing. And I'm not really sure how to top that. Revenue, customers, like, of course, all that's really exciting. Of course, all that stuff is really exciting, but it's difficult just from a, I don't know, fulfillment or what you're proud of. It's hard to find something that you can be more proud of than that you're genuinely giving other human beings a chance. That's an incredible thing that any organization can do, and it doesn't matter the scale, right? Because one person is a huge impact. The end. Like, this is not a scaled measurement question, right? This is just helping a human being. When the universe ends in heat death and everything is just a soup of neutral particles at 0.7 degrees Kelvin or whatever, none of this will matter. I think you have to ask, like, what am I actually doing in the world while I'm alive? What impact will I have on other people and on the world? And that has to be the measure of things. And so that any organization of any size can have an impact that matters to another person.
Right. Wow. You made me think of a lot of other questions, which I don't even have time for. I feel like it would be silly of me to not touch on anything industry related, given I've had so many conversations with so many guests from the WordPress hosting industry on this show in the past. And we've had a lot of recurring conversations, and I'm so curious about your take. And with the time we have, can't go into any great detail, but more recent conversations that I've had, like within the past year or so, with people who have an opinion or maybe are employed by hosting companies, have been interesting to me to listen to. Just ask a question, get their take,
Sure.
see what people are on the inside from the hosting space are seeing on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
That's been fascinating and very telling. And I've heard surprising things from people who work in hosting, saying things like, hosting as we know it won't be here anymore in such and such years, or it's all going to be this way, it's all going to be that way, it's going SaaS, it's going platform, it's going automated, one click, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's been so I've been curious to watch and just hear from people in these kinds of situations, and WP Engine is like known for pioneering this space for sure. How do you feel? I guess it's concise as you like, as some of the highlights of what we can anticipate on the horizon for the WordPress hosting industry specifically.
Okay.
That's a little broad, but some highlights.
I think a lot of times when people say stuff like that, oh, it's all going to X, clearly that's not true. Like, if you look in the history of computing, never mind other industries, that is rarely true. I mean, sometimes things end, like AOL just finally ended. But actually, that's an interesting point. Just now? Because wouldn't you have said that dial-up is dead for 20 years, 10 years? Not 20, 10? Like, it should have been long, 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 long dead, and it's not. Microsoft should have been long, long dead. Like, for 15 years, everyone just derided them as being, useless. They're not, because once you have a certain scale and momentum in tech, actually, it's not true that it suddenly is something else. And more people write stuff in Word and Excel in this very day than anything online, even though it's, how many people called for the death of the desktop, authoring thing in the face of Google Docs or whatever.
Sure.
I don't know, everybody for the last 15 years. Well, they're still not right. That doesn't mean there won't be a day where they are right. Just the point is, like, it'll all be this. Maybe in 20 years, but is that really what you're asking? If you're asking in 5 years, the answer is no, it won't be all different. What I find is a lot of times when people have those kind of sweeping things, it's probably because whatever they're doing is the thing that's next. So if they say, well, everyone's going to go to the cloud, you can pretty much bet they have a cloud, or they have some interest in cloud. That's a good example. Hasn't everyone said that everything will be in the cloud? Haven't they been saying that for at least 5 years, maybe 10, depending on how forward looking they are, everything will be in the cloud? Today, right now, fewer than 10% of every WordPress site on earth, fewer than 10% is in the cloud.
Wow.
And the cloud's supposed to take over, and it has been for years and years and years. Well, it hasn't even cracked double digits for WordPress. So do I think the cloud is not real or isn't growing really fast? Of course I think that. Of course that's true. Of course it's a trend, but we already knew that. But this kind of like, but it'll take over everything. Like, again, well, maybe in 20 years, I don't know, but like not in 5 years. So, and that's a pretty long time. So I don't believe in that. People have said email will die, but I get more email than ever. I don't know about you. People said social media would kill WordPress. People said Wix would kill WordPress and Squarespace, but WordPress continues to grow anyway. WordPress cannot grow till the death of the universe, but all these doomsday sayers about different things and how it'll all be is not true. But clearly, there's trends like mobile that are true, and cloud is true. It's just a trend, not a devastating thing. So I think maybe what's interesting is what are leading edge trends. So not that everyone will be doing this in 2 years, not that stuff, but rather stuff that the people aren't doing very much of now, but they probably will be doing a lot more of, and it'll be a thing. That is a good question. So in mobile, my view is in the last 5 years, well, 5 years ago, marketers realized, oh, mobile is like actually a thing, and my site needs to look different on a mobile device. Remember, it's only 10 years ago the iPhone came out, where, of course, no one had a mobile site. So it took about 5 years to go, well, between that and Android, we really need to do it. And so there was different sites or responsive, and that's what we sort of figured out over the past 5 years. It took us a long time to figure that out, by the way. But anyway, we're all there now, right? Unfortunately, we're not done. We all know that mobile traffic has overtaken laptop traffic for most websites, and it's a trend that will absolutely continue, not just because the curve looks like it will continue. Also, as the next billion or two people come online, there's only about 3 billion people online now. As those people come online, it'll almost completely be mobile. That's what's going on there. It's not laptops, it's phones. Part of that is batteries and power consumption, and the fact that there aren't necessarily hard wires. And nevertheless, that is the case of what's happening. So this trend that it's going to be mostly mobile is not going to change. So then what's happened is, okay, so mobile is not only important, but more important than laptop going forward. Okay, fine. There's new technologies like AMP and progressive web apps, PWAs. Of course, they're controversial for various reasons. But these are the technologies that most marketers are looking at doing. And a lot of them are looking at doing it with WordPress, which is great news for everyone in our community. But for people who say like, well, PWAs are complex and I don't need it, and AMP is some weird Google thing and we should be against it. Well, I think I understand some of those rationales, and I do think there's a more subtle argument to be had around, can we do AMP but not have Google control it? They've already started doing that, of course, with a consortium. Also, you can host it yourself. Also, Cloudflare can host it for those who want to self-host and still have not Google host it. Cloudflare can. In other words, I think there are subtle ways to get around some of the objections, which I understand. But in the main, we actually just completed a study, which we'll be publishing some of during this month. So stay tuned for that on our website. but about exactly this. And we polled thousands of marketers, and 85% are going to implement AMP and PWA in the next couple of years.
Wow.
In other words, basically everybody. And when you hear that, like just saying like, oh, AMP sucks, like, okay, except that's what everyone wants. And so if you're a consultant in WordPress and you want work, or if you're making products in WordPress and you want to know where things are going, PWA and AMP, because of the rise of mobile and well, the dominance of mobile, are very important. Again, I'm not saying every site's I'm not saying those things, but almost all marketers are saying, yeah, I'm getting into that. Now that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Who will actually do it? What will they spend? I don't know, but they're interested, and that's important. And many will. So it will be a trend, and that's an interesting one to take a look at. So that particular development in mobile along those technologies, that's an interesting one to me. I think another one's interesting is headless. Let me take a really abstract view of headless, because there's a lot of stuff about headless and WordPress and what to do and why, and so like and React, and I don't want to get into all that because it's true, but it's, you know, you can read about it everywhere. Here's a really abstract way to think about it. Because the browsers are now smart, meaning they can run JavaScript code that does pretty much anything, and they can run it fast. Like JavaScript used to be super terrible slow. Now it's actually reasonably fast. It's probably about as fast as Python. Python's what a lot of backend stuff is made in. In other words, the browsers are about as fast as your backend stuff, unless you're crazy like we are using Go. But unless you're nutty like us, the browser is basically as fast as your server, and is capable of computing things and storing stuff in databases and doing all this kind of stuff. And the devices are too. The handheld device in your pocket, you know, that A9 processor, whatever the hell they're on now, I can't even keep track. It's as good as, I don't know, fill in the blank. We all know, like, there's some kind of stat about how it's really, really good. But the point is, like, the phone in your pocket is crazy powerful. So is the laptop on the desk. So it has the processing power to do anything, kind of, as much as a server from 5 years ago could do. And so can the language that runs in the browser, especially with WebAssembly, where you can cross-compile other crap to it, okay? So that means there is way, way, way more computing power in people's pockets and desktops than there is in the data centers. And that is an abstract mind shift. And if we're really talking about mind shift, I'm not saying everything, but like as a mind shift, what do you do with computations and application development when there's way more computation available outside of the data center than inside? And furthermore, the company like the web host or the application designer, they have to pay for everything that happens in the data center. It doesn't matter if it's us or you or, you know, if you've got a server, you're paying a data center because there's power and internet and AC and all kinds of stuff. But if it's in the phone or the browser, you're not paying for anything. You're not paying for the bandwidth or the API calls they make. You're not paying for the storage of when it caches crap. You're not paying for the computing power. You're not paying for the AC that's in the office or your hot fi that your phone's next to. You're not paying for any of that. It's quote unquote free. It's not really free, but it's not yours, not your cost. So wait a minute. Most of the processing power is out there and free. What? That changes a lot when you put it that way, and then that changes a lot about how you think about applications. What is an application? How should an application be architected? Then you think about other things about mobile, such as a lot of times the network connection sucks because I go in a third world country, obvious. In America, in rural areas, obvious. Even in New York City, you go in the subway, it cuts out. Sometimes it's fast or slow. Sometimes it switches networks. The network's shit on a mobile device. That's part of the deal. The more the mobile device can be doing, the less that matters, because it's doing it, not phoning home for something to happen, but it's doing it. So also, when you tackle some of the obvious characteristics or challenges that mobile has, doing stuff on the device is a way around that. You can do that if it's slow. You can do it if it's offline. You can have things like push as opposed to just pull. There's all kinds of interesting things that happen on the mobile device. And now you have the computation and infrastructure, you might say, in order to really take advantage of that. So what does all that mean about making experiences, applications, websites, et cetera, whether it's on WordPress or on WP Engine or none of the above? That's a really big, interesting question. And that is something we face today. So when you think about headless WordPress, it's not just something like, oh, it'd be nice to cache the API calls and have the front end run locally so I can do this one thing and I can pre-cache a page. That is all true, but it's thinking very, very small about what is possible when most of the stuff's happening at the edge and actually at the very edge instead of in the data center. So thinking beyond, oh, I can cache, or oh, I can scale this, or oh, whatever, it's on a mobile device or it's on a website. All true, but you're like looking at step one of what could be done with that mindset. So you can guarantee that companies like Facebook, Amazon, they all are thinking about what those things can be. And it's not like, if you don't think about that, you're obsolete. I don't also, as you can tell, do not believe in those kind of statements. I'm not saying any of those things. But if you want a really like mind expanding way to think about headless, that isn't just an incremental transformation, then think of it that way, and then all kinds of interesting new possibilities appear. And if WordPress can be on the server powering that, then that's great, again, for the WordPress community, and of course for us in particular, obviously, but also for the WordPress community. If we collectively are creating these experiences that are quite new, and perhaps in a long view inevitable, maybe not. And if we're doing that in WordPress, we're creating technology in WordPress to enable that. We're superpowering the WordPress API. We're making that thing very cacheable. We're making it easy to extend in certain ways. We're making it possible to queue things and do, or otherwise do things that are offline and still make it back to the API and somehow have the data be consistent. There's a lot of challenges that have to do with what's going on the server or the client side. And if we can make WordPress be a platform that can handle that, then maybe WordPress can be a platform to tackle this new way of thinking about the mobile revolution beyond reactive reactive design and using React for headless because minor reasons.
Sure. Wow. I had never thought about it that way, and you're absolutely right. That's pretty powerful. I had a bunch of other questions, and even questions that were sent to me by others, but no.
Well, send one. So do one.
Somebody did. A friend did ask a little bit about e-commerce and what WP Engine is up to in terms of e-commerce these days, more or less. Heard that cool things are in the works. Don't want to, if you want a passing comment, we're a little bit over time.
Yeah, it's a great topic. I think the next version of WooCommerce, when the tables are changed and so forth, will be really useful because a lot of the challenges people have around scalability and other kinds of flexibility kind of go into this fact that at the moment everything is sort of stuffed into the post table. I think WooCommerce is obviously used more than any other one commerce system online. In that sense, that's very powerful. On the other hand, of course, the biggest commerce systems are not WooCommerce. And in fact, even the mid-sized ones are not WooCommerce. And if you look at the trajectory of Shopify, it's very scary for a WordPress world. Especially since Shopify wants to have an API and integrate into more things. In other words, make it easier to have maybe a WordPress site and a Shopify site. You could say the same thing about BigCommerce, for example. They're just, of course, behind in terms of size, but you could still use the same argument. I think WooCommerce needs more than just plugins, a few more plugins in order to compete against juggernauts like Shopify and BigCommerce. And so I think this next version of WooCommerce will be helpful because it does address some of the things that need to be addressed. But I think the most powerful thing about WordPress, doing WooCommerce in WordPress, is the fact that the owner could have complete control over the entire experience. And certainly with things like Shopify, you have very little control. Yeah, you can skin it, of course, but you have very little control over the experience. But the good news is the experience you do create works. It works at scale. It works with different currencies. I mean, you name it, all the stuff. There's so many things that go into an e-commerce world, and it works. That one feature is very good, the fact that it works, and often overwhelms the fact that you're limited in what you can customize. And so I think to make sure that WooCommerce is on par in terms of the fact that it can just always work, but then also that you can fully customize everything else about the site is important. I think, for example, we could emphasize as a whole community, we could emphasize content-based e-commerce. In other words, the marriage of content marketing and e-commerce, which is very popular now. This is not something we made up, right? This is a big trend in e-commerce. This is a perfect formula for WordPress. Oh, content marketing, that's what WordPress is best in the world at. Commerce. Okay, WooCommerce is the most popular commerce site. Duh. And so, like, the more we can push these ways in which WordPress is clearly the best, that is helpful. So I think just in more generally that's sort of the view on the e-commerce space and WordPress's role in it. It's hard because Squarespace has now gotten into it. Wix obviously has, in addition to the Shopify's and BigCommerces and the smaller ones of those. And man, it's really busy. And these folks like Wix and Squarespace are very good. Like, these are not competitors to just go, what are they going to do? They're good, and they have big customer bases, and they have big marketing budgets as well. And all those things are powerful. And I think WordPress needs, in general, needs to have a good perspective and position on why WordPress is better than those for what categories of shop. I think that's the key, or what customer base or whatever, what have you, and really own whatever it is that WordPress is the best for. Just saying like it's good for commerce is a difficult one to go against, because each one of these other guys have reasons. Well, Squarespace is best if this, and Shopify is best if that. Great, WordPress is best if what? And the answer shouldn't be, well, if you're anybody. Like, that's not really an answer. And so it'd be nice to know if what, and then. And I'm giving an example. If content marketing and e-commerce together is important to growing your business, there is no better one than WordPress. So I have an answer, but what are the other answers? If it's simple, or what? Like what are some other answers of when WordPress is and should be the best? And then let's really all, as a community, focus on that messaging, that positioning, tools, examples. Like, let's all focus on just totally winning at those parts of the market. I think that would be very helpful in the face of a very increasingly crowded market with smart players.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Fascinating perspective. You're absolutely right. And I've got to throw my wrap-up questions at you real quick here, because I want to respect your time and also help my wife finish cooking dinner. So when are people going to bump into you next in person, and where? Like, what's on your calendar for the rest of this year?
So I'll be at WordCamp US talking about, I have a talk on mobile, and that data I just mentioned that we got, I'm going to be showing all that data. So come see what marketers are saying about mobile and what they want, so that you can, as agencies, so you can pitch them on those things and go get those deals. And as product folks, you can go build products that those folks will want for mobile. So that's in WordCamp US. And then before then, in the UK, we have an agency summit. We just wrapped up our US agency summit 2 weeks ago. We have another one in the UK. If you're an agency in anywhere that you want to be in London, so maybe Europe, but it doesn't matter where you are, then I guess you could email me, jason.cohen@wpengine.com, and say what you're doing. And it's an invite-only conference, but like, let me know, and we'll see. We have a certain amount of space, but I can certainly pass that on to the events team.
Wow, cool. That's interesting.
We have space for a few hundred, and we may be getting close to that. So, but yeah.
Okay, I haven't heard about the agencies. Is that something you've done in previous years?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we've done it for a couple of years. We started in the US, then we did US, UK. Now we're doing US, UK, and Australia. So yeah, we're sort of slowly ramping up the size of each one and how many locations that we do.
Wow, that's remarkable. Do you have good recommendations for me for people that I should invite on the show in the future?
Well, I'm not sure who you've had on recently. A lot of people have said nice things about Atomic Blocks from the Array Themes guys, Mike McAllister. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you've had him on recently, but since Gutenberg is hot, blocks are hot, that block library is hot. He's a smart guy. That could be a good combo.
That's a good recommendation.
Hmm.
Yeah, right on. How can people get in touch with you if they're interested?
Well, again, my email address is first.last@wfuture.com. So that's easy.
Is there a profile of people out there that you're most interested in hearing from?
Uh, Not in particular. Usually it goes the other way. There's something they want from us or something they're talking to, which is fine. So yeah.
Okay. Well, super cool. Jason, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your Monday to chat with us. It's been really awesome. I asked a fraction of the questions that I wanted to,
Well, I
but
talked too much, but hopefully it was useful or interesting.
that is exactly what the discussion that I was hoping to have, even
Okay.
better. So thank you once again, kind sir. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.